This is Changeling the podcast.
Welcome to Changeling the podcast. Come for the glamour, stay for the vibes. I'm your host Josh, and with us is your other host Puka. Say hi, Puka.
Hi, Puka.
What are we talking about tonight, Puka?
I believe we are doing our deep dive into the monstrosity that is the first edition player's guide for Changeling. Not monstrosity, it's just, it's a chunker.
Yeah, it's a chonker, but I mean, it's... How many pages is this? This is...
100 and... It's almost 200. 192,
Yeah,
I think.
That's not a chonker.
I think it says, on the wiki or something, 96, and I remember seeing that and saying, that's not correct.
Speaking of strange things here, I don't know about your printing. My printing is from a later date, 1997, and has an ad for Hunter the Reckoning. So...
Yeah, I have both of these qualities to mine as well.
Huh. Now, is this the only one and there was some sort of time travel shenanigans?
Well, as we've said many times before with Changeling books, who can say?
Yes. In fact, all Changeling books were actually written in 2003, and the myths have covered up their actual publication dates.
Lies.
Yeah, trust the Puka on that one. Okay, so...
Always trust the Puka. It does also have, I'll point out in the copyright box, it says, where it has everything that's copyright White Wolf Publishing Incorporated, they also include Aeon and Werewolf the Wild West. So I think that also helps localize it in time a bit. But
yeah. And it starts off, before the table of contents or anything, there's that little oops section where you can email puka.ian@aol.com. I'm sure that address is still up. Or send a self-addressed stamped envelope to the White Wolf offices in Clarkston, Georgia.
Get right on that. We do have a cavalcade of writers credited here, including Phil Brucato, Jackie Casada, Richard Dansky, Jennifer Hartshorn, Robert Hatch, Stephen Herman, Chris Howard, Ian Lemke, Angel McCoy, Neil Mick, and Nikki Rea, with additional material by Alan Tower. I think most of those people have popped up in other books we've looked at as well.
Mm-hmm. There's also a word from White Wolf Game Studio saying giving a fond farewell to Jennifer Hartshorn.
Then we get into the book. One thing that I want to say, just as a general note as we launch into this, is I think this book has my favorite art for the chapter openings. They all kind of tell a little story, and they're all sort of exquisitely, in my mind, drawn. And I really like them. So I'm not entirely sure why every single red cap needs to have rivets and nails in their face and usually doesn't have a nose, but that's a choice.
Yeah, I think that we're still figuring out what the kiths look like. Things sort of get more cemented down as second edition goes on, I think, but this is...
Yeah.
Rivets in the face, though, I don't think that should ever entirely go away from the red caps. I think some of them should still have that. Rivets or paper clips, or not paper clips, staples or whatnot.
Yeah, or fishhook earrings or whatever. It's fine. It's just, it seems like every single one of them has that fashion choice.
Yep. It's got a lot of orc look to it, too.
Yeah. Anyway, we start with some fiction.
Yeah, speaking of red caps.
Yeah, The Shy Red Cap. What did you think of this story?
At first, I was a little bit worried because you have this Sealy Redcap who's a bit of a nice guy in capital letters. But I actually kind of liked it. I found it kind of sweet.
Yeah.
So it's I like the going to a member of every of the corebook Kithane asking for dating advice. I like that. Getting very different answers.
Yeah.
I have questions now about chimerical interactions with cows and other animals. Do you need to be enchanted to mess with a cow, or does the cow need to be enchanted, or can you just mess with the cow? I don't know. It probably would have been changed by later editions anyway, but I'm now asking for my own games if you ever do chimerical cow tipping, or chimera doing cow tipping, not tipping chimerical cows.
Either way.
Yeah. There's going to be some questions there. Maybe we'll do a Storyteller's Vault supplement on it.
Oh.
Maybe not.
We have this story about the red cap in love, and I suppose it's also good in that showcasing how every kith would give advice on love. That's like intro to the player's guide. We're going to tell you in-depth things about various kiths, which I like.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The knocker one, for instance, like they all could be taken differently. They're members of the kith. They're not like
Right.
it's not every knocker would be the same
Yeah.
opinion, for instance, but
One should not universalize.
yeah.
And then we get to the introduction. And again,
Mm-hmm.
favorite art, we have this Marlene Dietrich knocker, and just one of my favorite images in the entire game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this introduction's even more explicit than most White Wolf books, that everything here is optional. Use whatever you want at your table, kind of thing.
Which, frankly, a lot of them should say more succinctly and outright.
Yeah. This one felt a little bit like, we don't really like this book. But I mean, I think it is good. But I don't know.
I was pleased to see, the introduction essentially just consists of a list of inspirations from, movies and books and music. And I'm glad that most of the ones several of the ones we covered in our episode about 10 inspirational books for Changeling, which ended up being 13 inspirational books for Changeling, a lot of them are actually listed here. So
yes, and a lot of the ones we didn't do hadn't been written yet. So
that is fair. The
music I found, I don't disagree with any of the music choices, but I think it was a little bit too limited in genre.
It is very sort of Irish trad / new age / folk cross section. That is true.
Yeah.
With some rock mixed in.
I think you could add like industrial or something from that period, or some of the stuff that shows up in other White Wolf books would have still worked in Changeling, but
maybe they didn't want to do like deep cuts or anything. I don't know, but
yeah. But I mean, come on, I think you have to have Cure somewhere in a Changeling game. The Cure,
perhaps, yeah. Dead Can Dance is in there. I mean, get some of that gothiness. But yeah, I remember reading this when I first got the book, and I was just thinking, oh, it's my CD collection. Great. So that worked out. And that's the introduction. That might be like the briefest book introduction in the entire line.
Yeah. It's still kind of dense, though. Like, it's...
Yeah.
For an introduction, it has a lot of content with those recommendations.
Well, this book overall, I would say, is very densely written. They do pack a lot of material into these 200 pages. It sounds like a lot to work with, and it is, but they certainly get their page count.
I also want to say, though, on this book, it is my Changeling book that is faring the least well in terms of integrity. I have a lot of loose pages here. I don't know.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I was very careful reading it.
Mine is a bit yellowed with age, but it's holding up physically all right, I think. So then we have chapter 1, the Kithane traits, and we start with the introduction of merits and flaws into Changeling, which had not previously existed.
It says these are taken from... Merits and flaws are taken from vampire and werewolf.
And mage.
It doesn't say it's taken from mage.
Yes, but
one of them obviously was.
Yeah. Yes, we do have the sphere natural merit for changelings. So
yes, but then the text of it is all about talking about arts. So you're like,
still though,
yeah.
Some of them clearly were not edited closely. Yeah,
this is a section that's like nice historically, but like I don't really see anything in here where I'd go, I need this in my C20 game, because like the merits and flaws, I mean specifically, they're very similar to what you get in second edition and then C20. I found.
Yeah, well, in the second edition, I think they pretty much just copied and pasted with maybe... So, all right, here's something that I wanted to look into and ask you about because it was bugging me. With birthrights and frailties for kiths, the ones specifically that give you extra attribute dots, at your table, do you run those as only being chimerical or across the board all the time active?
I go across the board all time active.
As do I.
In second edition, I didn't get that impression that it was supposed to.
I think it's gone back and forth because... So in here, because Player's Guide is still first edition, we have the Seeming's Blessing merit, which lets you carry over those dots or those birthrights into when you invoke the weird or whatever. That's when you normally get them. But then the Seeming's Blessing lets you have them all the time. In second edition, there's specifically a note at the start of the kith section that says these are not active all the time. It's only chimerically unless you invoke the weird.
Yep.
And it seems like that's been dropped out in C20 along with the Seeming's Blessing merit.
Yep.
So
that's my preference. Yeah. So I think, well, just like in a shout out to Mage, the podcast, when they say there's more than 3 editions.
Yeah.
And I believe they've also talked about this on Walking Away from Arcadia with Changeling. when I say an edition, I usually think of like the core book, but really you can't extend that to the supplements because
Mm-hmm.
changes happen over time, and it's not like they were all written. It's not like all of first edition was written in one go, and then all of second edition, and then all of C20. I mean, C20 maybe there's not so many changes, but second edition, for instance, is a huge shift. But even first edition,
the issue for me is when a new edition comes out and they kind of try and compress a whole bunch of material from the previous edition, it runs into that problem where some of the stuff transfers very easily and then other stuff doesn't, but it all gets mashed together. And sometimes you end up with contradictory material.
My personal preference is for certainly if it's adding like an attribute dot or something, my preference is to just have it always be active as long as...
No, me too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite merit and or flaw?
No. I mean, besides sphere natural, I think all changeling should be natural and sphere. I didn't like the ties merits. Those all just felt like they should be backgrounds or something, like allies or the like.
And they got dumped in revised editions, which Changeling never got. So I believe in C20 they're kind of dumped as well. I always liked the Fairy Eternity merit. I thought it was kind of an interesting... I mean, for a 2-point merit, it offers a lot of story possibilities that are kind of intriguing.
Yeah. I like... Okay, my favorite... Okay, if we're talking about flaw in general, I wasn't... Because I kind of like, I've already seen these in the other games so many times, but I'm like, Bard's Tongue.
Yeah.
It's my favorite flaw.
Yep. And Changeling Eyes.
It's like Changeling Eyes is always like, I need one more point.
Yeah, exactly. It's the easiest extra freebie you'll ever get.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a bunch of them. They're the standard ones. There really aren't that many, I would say, which are Changeling specific that, no other splat could have. Slipped Seeming, maybe. Cleared Mists, things like that. Or She's Curse.
Greedy Glamour.
Psychic Vampire makes for an interesting story hook as well.
That's one that like I don't know if I've ever seen any player take that.
I just remember... Well, I know it's in Mage, but then also there's the Sorcerer path, which is Psychic Vampirism, and that can be really... That can make for a very interesting character. Probably an NPC, usually.
Yeah, Child is always the fun one when you're dealing with the first and second edition of you're playing a Childling.
Right.
It's like, should you just take that? Like, what?
Probably.
And then we get into new abilities.
Oh, the secondaries.
I don't like most of these. I feel the same way in the other games. Mage is a big one where it's just like, I think there might be something in here. At least one of these I thought should be in the game. And one of them is in the game, probably. Like the animal can kind of make sense, maybe. But like everything else just seems like it should be a thing you do with another ability.
Yeah. And I do like how the 20th anniversary lines have handled that with the hobby talent, the professional skill, and the expert knowledge, I think are the terms, so that you can really just fill in whatever you need to.
Yeah, because I don't know how much falconry really needs to be in your game.
Well, I'm dismayed not to see spitting in here, which we got in the one NPC for whatever it was, Freeholds and Hidden Glens.
Yep.
I do like, I mean, these are all standard ones you would find in any other, the early edition player's guides. But I do like the note in the knowledges section, we have a brief aside for sign language, which is not a separate ability. It says it can be bought as a level in linguistics, because linguistics was still a skill at that point. But it points out that not all sign languages are the same and that each one must be bought separately. I'm very glad to see that, because I believe there's this perception often that like ASL or whatever sign language someone is familiar with is just the sign language that everybody uses. It's like, well, actually. No. So it's good that that's in there.
The same actually happens with Braille too. Like Braille, depending on what country you live in too. Yeah. Even within English.
But aside from that, secondary abilities there. I do wish they had kept, I think it was in Vampire 2nd edition, there was a note that secondary abilities essentially cost half. So if you spent one ability dot, you would get 2 dots of your secondary ability. And I suppose they dropped that for balance reasons, but I wish there was something similar to make it clearer. Hey, you can like set this up to make it worth taking these.
Well, lore, for instance, does seem to have stuck around. I don't know if it's stuck around in Changeling, but that's one that I've seen in multiple games that's actually used.
I think it got bumped up to primary ability.
Yeah. But like astrology, computer hacking separate from computer, literature.
Pickpocket. Leatherworking.
Well, at least I could see a character who's like needing to roll pickpocket in a game.
How about gunsmithing?
Oh, and also splitting up science into multiple knowledges.
Game playing, if you want to get really meta.
Yeah.
Brewing. There are options.
Taxidermy. That maybe should not be that common in your game.
Anyway.
But next we get on to legacies. This is a thing I do like, and I do tend to bring out. I like bringing these out partly because it doesn't, even though the person's book kind of disagree, it doesn't present Seelie as always good and Unseelie is always bad. Like some of the Unseelie things, like I could have a friend who has that. That's fine. And some of the Seelie ones, you're like, that person's a monster. So it's good.
Arcadian, for example. You may view humans as inferior. Seelie legacy, you say. We do also have what appears to be a noseless red cap with rivet jewelry on the in the art on this page.
There's a nose. It's just a very turned up small nose. Yes.
Semi, half a nose.
Yep. But also it still has the pointy ears. So.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, these legacies, they do expand the range that players can choose from. I feel like back in the days of vampire, maybe, or even werewolf, you kind of got more nature and demeanor archetypes in, random clan books or tribe books or other places, so that if you really did put the full list together, you had a lot of options. And I don't know, for Changeling at least, I don't know that they ever did any beyond the core book and the player's guide.
Yeah, I think the player's guides might have been reprinted in the LARP book. That's about it.
And then we get the companion background, which is very underdeveloped.
I just totally forgot it wasn't in the core book.
Yeah. And then they developed them both more extensively in second edition, which was a wise decision.
Though I still find in C20 at least the regular Chimera, not the Chimera Companion, I've had trouble with that.
Yeah.
For chimerical items that aren't treasures. Like, don't just inflict an art, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the advantage is like the one that I know I've pointed to in the past is you can be wearing armor whenever you want, but not actually need to have it visible or usable until you call on the weird. But even that is kind of like, wouldn't you rather just take resources and just get armor that functions all the time?
Well, no, but then also then like, okay, fine, you get chimerical sword, you get chimerical armor.
Yeah.
Cool, okay, but like, if I'm taking a chimera, I want it to be cool and do something magical, not just its armor.
Yeah, there should probably be a better system for that. Note for the future.
Yes. Another storyteller book. So.
Yes. Yeah. Just have to make a list of these.
Yes. Take a drink. We recommend a storage. Now we have Chapter 2, The Kiths Society.
I did like this chapter. I think it's probably overall the most useful one because before there were the kith books, this is what you had for deeper information on each kith.
Yeah. When it came out, very useful. Nowadays, not so much.
Well, because C20 doesn't really have deep dives into the kiths except for the boggins, I would say that this is still as useful as going out and getting all the kith books, Yeah,
and I do like the knockers, for instance, better than the knocker kith book.
Right. Yeah. Like the takes on each kith in here are more grounded in just the core book material, which I like, with a couple exceptions. There are a couple items in here that I raise an eyebrow at, which we can talk about. Yeah.
Well, okay, but let's go through them. Okay, so we have boggins first. I still have not finished the C20 kith book boggins to compare it against, but I liked this one.
What do you think about reading each epigraph? Because I feel like that sums up.
Okay, yeah, sure. Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
A child is like a piece of uncarved wood. Each has a story to tell and limitless magic within. It's up to the carver to set that magic free. Myra Whittlestick, Boggin Busybody.
And that just tells you all you need to know, really.
Yeah.
Each of these kith write-ups is a little bit different in structure, but generally they give you background on kind of the dreams that gave form to the kith, their attitude towards each other, towards their peers, towards mortals, etc., their general appearance, beliefs, which I think is probably the most useful. It gives these sort of codes of ethics that go beyond the escheat and the court stuff, their organization, information about their birthrights and frailty, more specifics about the courts, and then, of course, their stereotypical outlooks on the other kiths. And I do like how this is divided into Seelie versus Unseelie. So you get the Seelie Boggin perspective on the satyrs and the Unseelie Boggin perspective. So that's a nice touch. It's a good solid 4 pages.
Yes.
A lot of these, I mean, there's some unevenness. So I think it's the satyrs, the trolls, and the red caps have like a lot more than the others. I kind of get the feeling that because this book was written by committee, different people were probably writing different kiths. Some of them start with in character or actually have a lot in character voice, and others have none at all. So yeah, I don't entirely know how much cross-checking there was between the writers.
Yeah.
But
Did you want to go through each kith, or?
Yeah, well, just briefly. I mean, so the issue. Here's the thing. Well, I'll give the issue epigraph. It says, "The wind at my back, a tail upon my lips, and a hearty stack of bills in my pocket. Now that's the good life." From Karlan Walksfar, issue storyteller, who I believe we last saw in The Autumn People. So there you go. The thing with the issue that, I mean, we've talked before about the sort of wincy stuff that's done with, oh, this is the non-white people kith, and lumping a lot of disparate traditions, beliefs, and mythoi into a single kith. The thing that really stood out to me, and I think my head spun around once or twice, they kind of go into the origin of the name Ishu, and they say, oh, well, thousands of years ago they were called Eithu, which is later the name we get for Ishu Thalain, but then it was modified into Ishu when the Arabs began arriving in Africa during the Middle Ages, which would have been along the eastern coast in like the 10th century or whatever. And that is so completely divorced in every way from where the actual name comes from that I feel like it's almost worse. And I say this as a white person who doesn't really have a personal stake in it, but I just look at that description and I'm like, how did you manage to make this worse? You know?
Yeah, well, I think the worst part in this bit is the sentence, "Despite their tribal origins, the issue of cultured, polished manners."
That also does not help. Yeah.
No.
So yeah. So this chapter,
it just says the issue can be
maybe skip this one.
Yeah, although it does say the biggest issue freeholds in Barcelona. You could.
Yeah.
It's not like every line was terrible in that, but
right. There are little moments that are cool. Like they talk about how two issue greet for the first time, how they abhor killing animals for sport, and again, the deeper information about birthrights and frailties. You know, that's useful. But take a deep breath and have a bottle of something strong next to you when you go through this bit.
So next is knockers, which I find to be the opposite way. Anyway, it's the "Greetings, you smarmy overpaid excuse for a piece of camel vomit. Well, as long as you're here stinking up the place, might as well show you the new piece I'm working on. But don't touch it. I don't want you to it up." Okay, the match drops and lights against the sandpaper, which burns the fuse and lights a candle, which burns through the rope. Huh? Oh, it's a toaster. Anyway, the candle burns through the rope. Theodal Silver Quack, knocker inventor.
What is with these names?
I don't know.
Is this what they call each other?
These must be PC. I think these might be PCs.
I suppose, yeah. Anyway.
I liked this section, like this entry on knockers, a lot better than Kithbook knockers, actually. It's interesting. Like, it's talking about, they have the same talking about the Goblin Town in New York. So, like, they often don't live together, but when they do, you get amazing things happening.
I did like the note that they apparently invented trademarks in the year 800.
Yeah, which I think actually predate the year 800, but
they might. I guess you had seals and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I like the outlook section where if you took it says like there's one for each kith, for one from Sealy knockers, one from Unsealy knockers. I think if you took away who it was from and you randomly sorted it, like I would not be able to tell which one's from the Sealy knockers, which one's from the Unsealy knockers.
And you probably couldn't tell which kith was which because they're all,
Yeah. Well, a few could probably figure out which kith they're talking about, but yeah, it's yeah. I like it. I like knockers as breaking the whole Sealy-Unsealy divide and just cranky.
Yes. And then we get the puka. So I think it's fitting that you got the knockers and I got the puka. And the epigraph we have is, "My, what a horrible present. This is certainly something I will never use." From Rasputin, the Puka street poet. This is actually, I believe, a direct quote from the immortalized novel. So, yeah, the puka section is maybe, ironically, pretty straightforward. And they give a lot of depth to the kith, I believe, because it's very easy to look at the puka and think, oh, silly cat girls and whatever, but it gives a lot,
Yeah, this one's a silly cheetah girl.
Yes, with leggings. But it gives a lot of little tidbits that flesh out the kith better, I think. We get information about the coup de Mardi Gras, where they converge on New Orleans for big old gathering. And I wish there were more. One thing that I do like about Kithbook Puka more than this is that the lies section is just a single paragraph that's like, oh, they don't consider it lying. They have a communication problem, or rather, others have a listening problem. Whereas Kithbook Puka has something like 4 pages on all the possible different ways that Puka don't tell the truth.
Yeah,
So,
like those actually explain how to play a puka, because there's some people who naturally go to puka and then they know how to play a puka, and then there's the rest of us who are like, how do I do this? So something like the Kith book's helpful on the
red caps.
red caps. So there's 2 quotes for them. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear by H.P. Lovecraft, Supernatural Horror and Literature. And give me the finger, will ya? Fine, I'll just take it. And your other 9 for good measure. Jenny Greenteeth, Moragai Terrorist.
That might be the most palatable Lovecraft quote in existence.
That's a whole other can of worms we don't need to get into for change.
We do not.
Of our own.
I do like, so we have, all of these kiths have illustrations by Adam Rex, who's sort of watercolory. I think they're watercolors. I do quite like. I especially like how the red cap we have here, who's like rings right in the forehead again, and a nose appears to be missing. They've got these spiked brass knuckles, but they're also wearing fancy socks and heels, which I deeply appreciate.
Yeah. So it's not the one from the story at the beginning.
Right.
The brass knuckles had me confused.
And again, this section is quite long.
Yeah, but it's all in character.
Yeah, for the most part. And we only get unseelie perspectives on the other kiths, which kind of undercuts the story at the beginning. So we had this whole thing about, yes, there are seelie red caps, and then it's, oh, we don't even bother telling you what they think about the other kiths. I do like the concept of the Moragai being in here, though, because they're kind of like proto-river hags. A subversive terrorist sisterhood of cannibal hags like Jenny Greenteeth and Gentle Annie and Black Annis.
Yeah. Red caps especially are groups I like, not necessarily for PCs, but like of all the kiths, I guess them and she are the ones I'm most likely to have a group of them be a regular thing, if that makes sense.
There's a corby of red caps.
Yeah, and you can have a nobility of she, I don't know. But
collective nouns
like
for all
you
the
still
kiths.
get boggins working together and satyrs and stuff, but red caps, I don't know. I always like having at least a lot of
because no one else wants to work with them, so.
Yep.
But that's something for the show notes, collective nouns for each kith. And then we get a bunch of satyrs, and their quote is, "What are you laughing at, Prince Charming? You want satyrs? Well, I got your satyrs right here. Ha ha ha. Philippe Lenoir, anonymous satyr." It's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? To have a name and then anonymous.
Yeah, that should be the puka section. Should have done that.
Yeah. Again, we get 5 full pages here.
Of satyrs are half nymphs.
Sure.
That's where the nymphs went. They turned into satyrs by this book. Doesn't really make sense, but
well, maybe as we've pointed out before, nymphs are like the kith that we never actually got before they turned into kind of an anime, but then also I guess kind of satyrs. And I think they'd effectively disappeared by the time the Player's Guide came out. But a lot of history. I mean, probably more than any of the other sections here.
Yep. It's like an origin story for the satyrs, which you didn't really get for the other kith as much. I guess you did for red caps.
And I do like, we get a description of the Califetos, which is the mourning song and the sort of, before one of the elder satyrs dies, they sort of give him one last party so that he parties to death, dies smiling, rather than be undone. Macabre, but fitting for the kith. And then the she?
Yeah, this one was, I mean, we already got a book on this, didn't we?
Well, we did, but what do you want to do the epigraph and then?
Yeah, I'll do the epigraph. We are the dreams of paupers and presidents, of queens and chieftains the world over. To dispute our right to rule is to dismiss the wisdom of all the people, of all the nations in the histories of the world, attributed to Duke Dre, House Gwydion.
That's what I'd expect from Dre. He's kind of a jerk.
But then there's like a more humble countess who does Annie, or Anne.
Yeah. Countess Anne. She's, is she in the toy box? I forget. So the difference between this section and the Nobles, the Shining Host book, I think, is we get all of the stuff that the Kith books give us that Nobles doesn't. So like Nobles doesn't really go into the On Beauty Birthright or the Noble Bearing Birthright or the Banality's Curse Frailty. And they don't really talk about the overall attitude or, I mean, like they give you in-depth information, but it's not this sort of bird's eye view, which I think is still helpful. And we get stuff about romance without going into the whole kerfuffle that is romantic legacies. So, you know.
Yep. And then we get the slua.
Let me tell you a story. Don't ask me where I heard it, as the answer would only disturb you. Don't tell others where you heard it. They would be upset. Just listen close, little childling, and know that every word is true, especially the ones that scare you.
Agnes MacDoo, Slua of Providence, Rhode Island, home of H.P. Lovecraft, no less. The Slua have this image that's like shirtless, emaciated, mad poet. And I don't know, I kind of like that as a Slua concept.
Yeah, really hard to scream, though.
Yeah, just kind of be like,
Ah!
Yep.
We do have the first note about Slua being able to see ghosts.
Yes, that was interesting. It's like updating their birthright.
But it also gives us the first note about the Slua originally being Russian for some reason. So,
yeah, I don't know where that... Why that? What?
Yeah.
I know, it's in the Kiths book as well. But...
Yeah, it was a choice.
But they also started out being blobs.
I do like that aspect. They were the formless shadows.
Okay. Should I read the entire troll one?
Well, I don't think it's necessary.
I'll read the first one. Perhaps strong arms and sharp blades will not hold back the coming winter, but all honorable fae must try. Sir Athelred, mendicant knight. And then there's a whole story?
Several paragraphs.
Yep.
I suspect because Kithbook Trolls came immediately after this, they had a lot of material sitting around. Because again, this is one of the longest of the Kith sections. And so maybe that was something that like got cut from Kithbook Trolls, so they just stuck it in here.
Yep.
Perhaps. But yeah, again, a lot of history. And actually, I guess we don't get birthright information here. Well, they're strong, and they don't break oaths. That's all you need to know.
Yep. They get the Code of Dagda.
Similar to medieval codes of chivalry or the samurai code of Bushido. Sure. And that's the Kiths. I mean, that chapter, because that's a solid 40 pages on the 9 core Kiths. And I do think that that is, on the whole, a useful section with a couple missteps. So,
yeah, I wouldn't say anything in that chapter was useless. Yes. You could say it was a bad idea, some parts, but none of it was useless, exactly.
Yep. And then we get to chapter 3.
Yes, chapter 3, the Nunnehi.
All right. How should we preface this?
If you haven't listened to our other talk about the Nunnehi, we are 2 white guys. We have opinions. We are working on creating an episode to go more in depth from people who are more knowledgeable about the cultures, at least some of the cultures the Nunnehi are drawn from. But in the meantime, we still have our opinions we're probably going to put out there.
I'd like to submit that the term guys is used very loosely in my case, at least.
Sorry, two white people.
2 white folks. Yeah. When we talked about Rage Across Appalachia, where they're first introduced, I think I had said, and I'll maintain this, you can see where the good intentions were, and you can see that effort was made. How much of that effort falling flat or not going far enough can be attributed to it was the 90s and these were freelance writers under a deadline doing research to the best of their ability, and how much of it is just white people wrote this, you know. I don't know.
Well, I think it's, if you put in white people wrote this who were under the deadline and all that stuff in the 90s,
right,
all together, kind of.
Well, I think that there's some, because I do believe that it is possible, especially now, for people of any background to find adequate information to at least get an idea that's more grounded than some of the stuff we get in these books. So I don't necessarily, I don't think that one's own ethnic background necessitates poor research, is what I mean.
Yes.
But
because some of the poor research in this chapter isn't even about indigenous peoples.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Like basic geography screw-ups.
Right. And there are other notes that I feel like, oh, okay, they may have known someone or talked to someone who gave them this perspective from an indigenous point of view, and they incorporated that. It's like, great, that's wonderful. But I don't know that we'll ever, because there's so many little bits of information all woven together, I don't know that it's possible to really separate all of the threads.
It would be an interesting challenge for someone to take up for some future book.
Well,
neither of us could definitely do it.
Yeah, until then, we're left with this chapter.
Yeah.
So we get a lot about the nature of the Nunnehi.
One thing we get here, which is interesting, is there's more in depth on the Nunnehi Changeling Way than we ever get on the Kithane Changeling Way, like how it originated and whatnot. And I'm unclear if it like was the Kithane Changeling Way going the same way originally. I don't know.
It's always been a little unclear, and there have been discussions about what it exactly looked like. You get conflicting information from, I would say, different editions, and then also when you bring in things like Dark Ages Fae, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really like the way it's set up here, where the Nunnehi Changeling Way was that they made arrangements with the people from their individual groups who agreed to act as hosts, and they would sort of share the body and lie dormant within the host until that person became a father or a mother of a child, at which point they would pass into that infant. It's a little weird when you sort of think about the, I guess, metaphysics and biology of it, but it's a much less intrusive thing than, for example, what the Arcadian Sidhe do or what the early Kithane are implied to do. So,
yeah, although it's also doesn't seem to still be maintained because we get Nunnehi who have children.
Right. And presumably there are Nunnehi that are born outside of these bloodlines. In fact, we do get a note that there are non-indigenous Nunnehi, which is a whole thing that I don't want to dive into. So.
And it also doesn't have enough information to do anything with it.
Right. It's just a historical note.
Written. Yeah.
There's also the note that they can be sources of glamour for Kithane.
Which was in the previous.
Yeah.
Right above them.
Oh, yeah.
This is they're even more tied to like the human cultures, the associated human cultures. I really wish they could just deal with glamour the way like they could muse people and stuff.
Well, they do. That again, that's something which was in Rage Across Appalachia, but I think gets overlooked so often. They absolutely can do reverie at the very least, although it does say they get a +2 difficulty when, using anyone who's not doing.
Well, does it say that in here?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. Oh, okay. Never mind.
It's later on when they talk about the gathering medicine from nature. But yeah, what I'm curious about is, can they ravage? Because that is left unanswered. So
we'll just assume that because it didn't exist yet, that they can all do Rhapsody, right? That makes sense.
Well, sure. It's unclear to me whether they've always been able to step sideways into the Umbra, or whether that only happened after they were cut off from the dreaming, because we get notes that they were intermediaries between their people and spirits for a very long time. So it would make sense for them to be able to enter the Umbra for as long as they've existed.
Yeah. Well, maybe they could, because I think, the Rage Across Appalachia had them develop that after their shattering. But like, if you also there's a new art for them here. If they had that art, but not the step sideways, they could still be intermediaries.
But then wouldn't it make sense for like all of them to have that art? To just have it be an inherent. And the art, we'll get to the art soon, but frankly, it's a very clunky art. So
oh yeah.
Anyway, then we get the history section, which I just did not really want to. I was glad when it ended, because
is it better or worse that the Sidhe are just European colonizers in this one?
Well, I'm glad they call them what they are.
Yeah.
But they have the whole, they came over, the whole pre-Columbian Sidhe exchange thing is just something that I want to throw my hands up every time I see it.
What if we just had the other way? Nunnehi visited Europe and stuff.
They could have.
Yeah.
But there's just very little detail about everything. So, I mean, it shakes out to about 1 page of history.
Yeah, I think it's just trying to explain the Accordance War.
And why they're not Kithane.
Yes, but also explain why the Sidhe were able to take over freeholds and create new freeholds, or bring up old freeholds or something. I don't think it's the best way of doing that by any stretch.
No. And it really overlooks, I mean, there are these sort of notes like, in the last few decades, there's been a resurgence of Native American pride and a renewal of interest in the old ways. Yeah. And that's kind of the only information you get for like the last 100 years of history.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to focus on that instead of being able to walk into a shrub to go to the Umbra.
Right. Like, or getting information about some ancient pact between a Sidhe who for some reason was in Appalachia in the 13th century.
Yep.
So moving on.
Then we get a geography section that completely ignores anywhere I've lived.
Well, yeah.
Which is confused. As I was saying about the geography thing, it talks about the Confederacy of the Iroquois which I double checked did include what's parts of what's now southern Ontario, but this book claims otherwise.
I don't know that it specifically claims otherwise, but it certainly elides that piece of information.
Yep. But it's just kind of left out in like the later things. It's just like, well, I want to if I wanted to use this book for like where I don't know the two places I've played Changeling and tends to set games in my own.
I think that it's an issue of whether or not, because as much as they say, as much as it's explicitly spelled out, Concordia includes Canada and Mexico at the very least. Canada and
Mm-hmm.
Mexico are never given any detail.
Yeah. Well, it's also if you look though at the you know that big map that's like in the different core books,
Yeah.
right? It actually implies that like the chunk of Canada I'm talking about are actually in the United States anyway. So, but it's just a little bit like because they do talk about northern Canada. They actually do talk about Canada and other places, just nothing to do with Ontario and Quebec.
Well, I mean, they talk about northern Canada in relation to Alaska mostly.
Yeah.
So
Well, no, they also talk about like West Coast and the prairies too. But
that's, well, they can extend from Washington State up to Alaska. Yeah.
yep.
I will say, I think that this is the section which I can't vouch for the accuracy of all the research, but it's
Yeah.
clear that they tried here because they
They
do
obviously
give...
did lots of research. Yeah.
Right.
Whether or not it was accurate, but like that I think you can forgive a little bit in the 90s, mid 90s. It was harder to get a hold of stuff.
They give the names of lots of different groups, and
Yep.
they attempted, it seems, to do research into the languages. The thing that I found strange was that it seemed kind of anachronistic. So some, we get notes like, I think there's a bit about the Mohawk taking on the modern role of steelworkers high atop the skyscrapers of Manhattan. And I kind of think,
Yeah.
I guess that could maybe still be kind of a thing. But then the Zuni live in a single defensible village on top of an inaccessible mesa since the time of Coronado. And I think, is that still the case? I mean,
Yeah, I think the research they did was history books. That's the
yeah,
problem.
some of them from like 1990 and some from 1890, probably.
Yep.
So we have information about the 3 camps as opposed to the 2
Mm-hmm.
courts, which, fine, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And then the seemings. The sort of designation of wilders as braves, I'm uncertain about
Mm-hmm.
because it sounds like the leveraging of a stereotype, but
Or at the very least, well, broadly applying one culture,
yeah.
maybe, or just a stereotype of one culture.
Yeah. And then we have some legacies, which there are a
Mm-hmm.
couple in here which strike me as maybe not very forward thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't imagine that any person would want to play a character with the legacy scalp taker.
No.
So, yeah.
Nor would I want to. They could have renamed things here at the very
Absolutely.
least. Yeah. And then we get to the actual kiths of the Nunnehi. I want to say there's one thing might make more sense from actually like applying to real world culture things, but which I think hurts the game is that these Nunnehi are supposed to be all very regional.
Yeah.
So like if you wanted to run a game, you get like maybe 2 or 3 kiths you could play.
Yeah.
And in some places just one. And that's a problem, I think, for like just from role playing game, not from representation necessarily. I might be, especially though it's just playable. It doesn't work as well.
I suppose if the onus is on the storyteller to say, here's where the game is set, here's the kits that I'm allowing, that would be something for them to take into account. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like the Kithane are all over Europe, right? Like,
right.
If you set a game in Greece, you can still have trolls.
Or something troll-like, at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that even though we do have the note that they can get glamour from, in particular, indigenous art forms and creation, it's unclear whether it has to be from a group that they're part of or at least connected to. Like, could a Nunnehi from Maine get glamour from a cultural activity taking place in California?
Yeah. Good picking up too far apart places like that, because when you get closer, it also gets more complicated.
Right. Yeah. Things bleed into each other too. So yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't have to go through every single kith. What I do want to put into the show notes is, on my own, I've tried to do research and find websites and information from the different groups represented here.
Mm-hmm.
There are some really good indigenous folklore sites out there. that are also connected
Yeah.
with Indigenous language learning. So
Yeah, I had a few little things. I don't know if they're appropriate to the culture or whatever, but I've used rock giants a lot showing up in my games.
we didn't have gloams yet, so they fill that rock giant niche.
Yes. And also the Tunwi Sunsi?
Yunwi Tsunsi.
Yeah. Are another very boggin kith where I kind of like their frailty better than the boggin frailty as for boggins.
Easily offended if their help is slighted.
Yep.
Yeah.
That just feels very on brand for. I'm not going to get universal myth, but there's a lot of crafter fae that are kind of similar in a lot of stories, a lot of places.
Vindictive crafters.
Yeah. Maybe that's just dealing with people who make stuff.
Yeah.
If you insult what they did, they are going to get mad at you. So,
Knockers should have that too, maybe.
I mean, knockers will be vindictive either way, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, overall, I find each of the families of Nunnehi interesting, but there are a couple issues where, for some of them, there's a depth of description that sort of implies there are a lot of them, and I'm happy for that to be the case, but it kind of goes against what we've seen previously, where it's like the Nunnehi are almost gone, and that's why they're sending out these frantic war parties all the time, because it's this desperate last-ditch attempt to reclaim their land and their freeholds and everything. But we have like a lot of information about all of the different places that each of the groups lives and all of the different societies they have and everything. And it's, it's a contradiction that I know which side I would like it to come down on, but I don't think the books necessarily hold to it.
Yep.
So
it's kind of a prevailing problem in the world of darkness in general.
Yeah, because I suppose you have to make it, if people do start playing these characters, you need to give them enough diversity of options to make them not all the same one note.
Yep. You could say the same thing applies to the Geru.
Perhaps,
they're supposed to be dying out, but also...
Or mages, depending how many mages you think there are.
Yeah. Or mages, or changelings for that matter. And there was also some first edition issues where you're like, some of these birthrights and whatnot, or frailties, you're like, I don't know, that's missing a piece.
Yeah.
Like the Inuas birthright imbue amulet.
Also known as make treasure, basically.
Yeah, but it doesn't say what's involved in making one.
I guess they just do it. Isn't that great?
Yeah, but it's like, oh no, it only works once. I'm like, yeah, but if you take like literally what it says here, just be like, oh, okay. I just, okay, I made one. Cost me nothing. I'm going to make another one now.
Yeah.
And I don't even have to have the powers of it. It's like, okay, I don't think that's what they meant, because that's very powerful, but...
Yeah, there are some balance issues throughout.
Yeah. Yeah, they have some new Nunnehi backgrounds.
Yes.
Like household, which if it... Is this just mage cult background?
It says it's to replace retinue.
Okay.
Which I guess makes sense.
Yep. Big, long spirit companion background.
Which is actually, I think, more useful than the chimerical companion one.
Mm-hmm.
And totem.
Mm-hmm.
And then vision, which is basically remembrance, which was called at this point Grimaire.
Yep. And then we get their glamour harvesting.
I am curious because we have spirit companion. Is the implication because Nunnehi are cut off from the dreaming that they can't have chimerical companion? Because I would assume they still could.
Yeah.
They can still perceive chimerical stuff, so...
Beyond just, it still gives me uncomfortable vibes to make the Nunnehi more connected to spirit in general.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, there's a lot of weird questions it raises. Just more practical in the game questions. Here they can only do rapture in this Umbra now. Oh, but other people could still, changelings can still muse them if they're not in the Umbra.
Yeah.
So does it say anything here about, is this where the bit where they can take, oh, difficulty raised by 2, unless it's, although that's still actually difficulty raised by 2.
Yeah, well, it says cannot easily, but they can still do it. That's the point. They have more options for gaining glamour than Kithane do.
Yeah, they tend not to have freeholds as much, I guess, is the...
I suppose, well, they have glades and natural places of power, so...
Yeah.
And they also, somewhere in here, it has a note about them getting an extra success on primal cantrips, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They also start with an additional dot of glamour, so...
Yep.
But here's the note, because it says, cannot easily gather medicine from human creativity, which is reverie more than ravaging. So can they ravage? I don't know.
The weird thing is, though, it says from un-indigenous culture, not their indigenous culture.
Well, right. I mean, I think it's ambiguous. So, and I almost think, I almost don't want it to be universalized because then it trivializes it to an extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are things to hash out.
Yeah.
We get extensive information about totems,
Yep.
which...
And this time, there's no werewolf rules.
Right. Well, because we're not in a werewolf book, so...
Yeah, but we got it in the Nunnehi.
Yeah.
So I have a question here.
Hmm.
What's the upper world versus the lower world versus the middle world? Because it comes up a few times here.
So I think the upper world is the middle Umbra, because the lower world is the underworld, the world of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
The middle world
And the middle world's the
autumn world.
autumn world? Okay.
Yes.
Because at first I was like reading some of this and I thought it was like upper world was high Umbra, and then I got very confused. And then I'm like, wait, no, maybe that's not.
I would surmise that because werewolves don't go to the high Umbra unless they go to the middle Umbra first and then get there, right? So
Yeah.
I'd assume it works the same way for
Yeah,
Nunnehi.
because their way they travel over is with their totem material, and that's very middle Umbra.
Right. They don't astrally project.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the sort of banality ratings that we get in relation to for the strength of the gauntlet kind of echoes that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some very extensive rules about stepping sideways. There's a lot of stuff to parse through here.
Which you still have to have Wayfair and Nature to do it.
Although it is easier than opening a trod.
Oh, right. This is still when you need a trod to use Wayfair 3 to enter the to Dreaming.
To enter fully, yes. Overall, I will say I think I'm generally okay with them being spirit-centric. Like, it is weird mechanically, like you said, but from the limited knowledge I have about the body of folklore, that fits with the role they seem to have had. If they're intermediaries with the spirits in the legends of the different groups that they're drawn from, sure, I can roll with that, but I just don't know if that's accurate. So tentatively, I'm okay with all of this detail kind of being slathered on.
Given how many cultures we're talking about, I am not convinced. Because like the World of Darkness concept of spirit is very 20th century Western. It's not even like older Western or various other cultures. Like, I don't think it... I would be shocked if it translates well to, like, especially a chimera versus spirit distinction or anything like... But like what the Umbra is and what spirits are in the World of Darkness, that just... Even if it was taken from an indigenous North American culture, I'd be kind of surprised if it was across it. But
if you look at the basic concepts of having an other world and a general animism for the trees, the birds, the rocks, all of the things in the natural world, I feel more okay with a claim that those are more universal than some of the other possibilities, like some of the stuff we get in Mage, for example. Yeah, I don't know.
But having immaterial spirits, for instance, that's from a very weird interpretation of a Western tradition, for instance.
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily... I don't know that they necessarily have to be presented in that way here. I mean, spirits can be given in the mechanics of the game, the materialize charm. So if you have a body of belief that says spirits have material form in the physical world, you can represent that very easily in the game rules.
Well, I guess this gets into a way broader question we should probably have later, but like, does animism also imply dualism?
Ooh, that's like a whole discussion.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, in principle, I'm okay with it until I learn more. And
that's what I'm saying. It's twigging something for me, but it's...
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to be corrected if it's incorrect, but what I don't want is for all of it to kind of become a generic, all of the groups across North America function, have the same rituals, have the same belief structure. I think making that vague foundation of animism and otherworld is about as far as you can go before you start running into problems. So if the Nunnehi are presented in a way that just kind of sticks with that, which I think they kind of are here, I think it maybe kind of almost works.
Yeah, but this also the separation from the dreaming is that other...
Well, yeah, and that's a whole
issue.
That's a whole issue.
Yeah.
I would love for them to be more concretely related to both. Or no, I won't say that.
Or if you have like all Fae have this kind of connection, that would also be different.
All Fae should have a connection to the dreaming, I think. But if the culture that they're from, if the background of their kith's specific dream says that they're intermediaries with the spirit world, I can accept that they would also have some kind of spirit connection.
Yeah.
And maybe just for game balance, they had to say, well, then we have to drop them away from the dreaming or something.
Mm-hmm. Or they could have, like, I think they could have had them just not have good access to trods. But
perhaps, yeah. Anyway, moving
on.
Yeah, we have the Songs of Power, which are Nunnehi cantrips. We just get some information about Nunnehi magic, the importance of the medicine bag. That's one of those. See, that's an example of I'm not sure how universalizable that is.
Mm-hmm.
If every group had medicine bags, that seems like a more particular, localized thing. But
yeah,
we get a bunch of totems, some of which are quite powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at ice, for example, which costs 1 background point, and it gives you survival 2 for the Arctic, or presumably cold places, and an additional point of stamina.
Also, it's real easy to find up there to travel through.
Right. Well, and you're required to live in places where ice is prevalent, and to care for people
Yeah.
and creatures who make those lands their home.
Ooh, I mean, that does create a problem with climate change, but...
Well, yes. But for 1 background point, that's 2 dots of an ability and attribute are nothing to sneeze at.
Mm-hmm.
Granite gives you 2 points of strength and intimidate 2 for 3 background points. And all you have to do is never back down from a test of strength or endurance, which you will probably win.
Mm-hmm.
So, quite potent. And then that's it for Chapter 3.
Okay, so now we have Chapter 4, The Ways of Glamour.
And more art that I love.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that one, with the Slua in a tire. Looking at a little hummingbird.
Yeah, a little spot of Pleasantville color in a gray banal world.
So we get rules for bunks.
Without cards.
Yeah,
Yay.
I think it's better than the card system, but I'm still like, huh? On some of these rules. It's the first draft, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Or maybe a second draft, really?
It seems like an expansion of the alternate rules that we already got in the player's kit.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the first edition core book to an extent. But one thing that stood out to me here is a change that's certainly from this book to C20, and I'd have to check and see how much second edition goes into this. It seems more like when they give kind of the different levels of intensity for bunks here, they're basing it primarily on time that it takes. Whereas in C20, you also have the element of like risk involved or public display, This, it seems to be almost purely time related.
But there is a time-related component to the C21 too. You're not going to find... Well, it's a trade-off of various things.
I seem to recall one of the level 5 Wayfair bunks suggestions is something like jump off a building. So, I mean...
Yes. No, but I mean is there's a trade-off.
Yeah.
So, like, at the lower levels, it's a trade-off between difficulty and risk and resource usage and time.
Yeah.
Maybe you could put it that way.
It's a complex flowchart. Well, regardless, I do like how there's sort of general guidelines here and then several examples for each level. I guess 3 for each level,
there's also
which is nice.
Rolling to create a bunk for your characters. A bit interesting. This is, again, feeling more like getting a little bit into Mage Foci territory. I was just reading through, it's like, okay, it's got the caster's banality +4. Unless there's a mortal witness, then it's +5 of the highest banality. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of brutal. But you also get a free success, like an automatic success when targeting any changeling who's not resisting with banality.
Well, that's handy.
Yep. I like the C21, but for this part.
Yeah, I have my issues with the C20 bunk system, but we can leave those for when we discuss C20.
Yes.
And then we get more information about the chrysalis than I think we ever needed. Well, I won't say that we ever needed, but we get a lot that we probably don't need.
I think it might also be... I'm not sure if it's the same as later info we get on the chrysalis, but...
It's the maximalist interpretation of chrysalis, certainly.
Yeah.
We have this extended bit about lethargia as something which changelings can enter before the chrysalis, where they almost sort of resist awakening.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder why that wasn't in the Autumn People.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also exigency, which just makes me think of Exalted, because they have a new Exalted type called Exigence, who actually become Exalted through a similar method of exigency. So it's all... You have very odd-looking naked trolls.
Yeah, with faces that make me uncomfortable. Whatever they're about to do.
Just a lot that makes... Also, the top troll, the way the arms kind of... The shoulder, it's not right.
Not good yoga practice.
Yeah.
We do get a sidebar for one of my favorite groups in Changeling, which is the Order of Eliatheia. which was the Greek goddess of childbirth, I believe. And it's a group that's dedicated to rescuing and helping changelings through their chrysalis. So many potential story options just from having characters who are part of this order. The one thing that I do not like is when they talk about threats to awakening changelings, they include the Nunnehi in a preemptive strike to kill more, quote, foreigners, which is like, great, great, guys. You just completely undercut the whole chapter you just had.
Yeah, especially with the quote. That was just too much. Yes.
Yeah. But then also humans out of curiosity. And I'm like, what would a curious human do to stop a chrysalis? That seems like a much worse time for the human than the changeling.
I guess, yeah, they're calling them predators as opposed to just a complication.
Right. And I mean, there in the extended chrysalis essay, we have things about how the awakening changeling can warp their physical surroundings as well as the dreaming. So,
yeah,
you know.
Like they should also have not just mage looking for a quick fix of something. Should also be mage just going, is this a new mage or just what the heck's going on?
Right.
You know,
a quick fix of quote something. It is not understood what. Presumably glamour, but you know.
Yeah.
As has been pointed out in mage circles many times, it's not like quintessence is that hard to get. So seeking out a changeling going through a dream dance.
Well, first edition mage, if that's, although I think second edition was out by this point.
It very much was. Yeah.
Yeah, because in first edition mage, from my understanding, there was, even if mechanically it didn't make sense, there was more of a push for it. But
and then we have bits about fostering and saning, and then a woefully short amount of information about true names.
Oh, did you see the nasty thing where if you don't get fostered, like, sorry, if you don't do your saning, which is like only would apply to PCs, really, you stop collecting XP.
Oh yeah. Well, because all right. So here's a general question: how often has the concept of the true name ever come up in your games?
It came up 2 sessions ago.
Does someone have naming, or?
Yeah, one of the NPCs had naming.
All right, well that makes sense. But aside from if someone actually has naming, has it ever come up? Because
no, but just naming comes up a lot in my games.
All right, well that's a choice. But what I feel is kind of like when we saw the knocker Theedle whatever earlier. Changelings seem to have 3 different names. They have the human mortal name that they grew up under. They have their true name, which given the amount of power it's alluded to contain, doesn't seem like something they'd want to share with anybody. And then the sort of fairy use name like Theedle or whatever. So there's a lot to dig into there, and yet I feel woefully undersold on the concept of the true name here. Like we just got a couple paragraphs that says they exist, they're important. And then later under naming, it's you can mess with it, but is it something that changelings have to use in rituals or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I generally have true names, or you never tell anybody your true name, barring some really big thing to give the benefit of it, and otherwise it doesn't really come up much if there's no naming involved.
Right. And whoever saned you knows it.
Yep. That's why you gotta be careful who's saning you.
It reminds me of the Wizard of Earthsea books, and I wonder if that's kind of what they were inspired by to some extent. I don't know.
Yeah, there's definitely more interesting ways to do true names, things called true names and other things. Like Mage the Awakening has, it's essentially just your mortal name. That's why you don't let anybody know your mortal name. But that's a different society than what Changeling does.
Yeah. Anyway, Chapter 5.
I like the intersection of Pangea and Narnia.
Classic art. This was the splash image that they used for the ad for second edition corebook. I do like that there's the tag for the unseelie glamour boys on the corner here, who turn up in the Shadow Court briefly. And just the puka with the necktie and the lunchbox with the dragon eyeing him. Just great. Just everything about that picture I love. Anyway, here's where we get new arts.
Yep. So we have Pyretics, which has always been a favorite of mine.
Same.
I feel like the C20 Pyretics is like in some quote-unquote better, like from some balance sense, but I like this one better.
I think people just like it because it's fire all the way through with resurrection at the end.
Which one? The C20 one?
The C20 one. I liked having Will o' the
It
Wisp.
is a bit, yeah, they put Will o' the Wisp and C20 into Soothsay. Yeah, I like it here.
Yeah.
In the game I'm running, one of my players would have, I think he actually wanted this version of Pyretics, even though he didn't know it existed.
Well, so in the game that I was playing in a few years ago in New York, I was playing a Slua who had Pyretics, who was a pyromaniac. It was wonderful. And C20 was released in the middle of us playing that campaign. And we kind of debated whether or not to update it was a Slua with Pyretics and Soothsay. Go figure. And so we kind of looked at the rejiggering of the arts, and it was like, no, this is just not. It's not what I want from those arts. So I do miss this version. I guess the new one is okay, but
yeah,
I like
just less setting things on fire.
Yeah, and that's fine. I like having illumination and finding things.
But I think there's still illumination in the C20, but
yes. And then there's naming.
Naming is very similar, I'd say, to C20. It's definitely been updated still, but
they mention in C20 that because here naming is restricted to the Crystal Circle and the Court Seers, and they sort of, for practical reasons, I suppose, because I imagine those changelings are in high demand if they have to do all the sanings. They've expanded naming to be available to lots of other changelings.
Yep.
But I don't know. Naming is still extraordinarily powerful, and having characters say, I'm just taking naming because I want to take it. I'm of the opinion that characters should still have a good reason to have naming.
I've found, I'm not sure it's actually extraordinarily powerful compared to the other arts now in C20, but here it definitely is.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, level 5 is still quite powerful.
Yes. Saning, I can't remember, I think that might be a lower level in C20.
I think so, yeah, because it's level 4 here.
I find this a little bit goofy, the system they have for it.
Did you ever play that game Jitters, where you had to like roll dice with letters on them and make words in a certain set amount of time?
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, so you get like, you have to like roll a chart to see how many letters are in your name. And then, yeah.
And the saner may not be able to determine all of them. Which is frustrating. I do like the runic circle one. I think that's really powerful and nice. It evokes a nice image.
Oh yeah, it doesn't even say you can necessarily re-roll it.
What's that?
It doesn't even really say that you can re-roll saning, does it?
Well, I guess you just use it more than once.
Yeah, but would it give you new letters?
Additional, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then there's Spirit Link, which has a lot of text devoted to it, probably more than any other art, and I'm still confused about how it all works.
Yeah, this is where you definitely need to figure out the upper, lower, and middle worlds.
Yeah.
To figure out this.
Well, so in order, because Spirit Link is not in C20, so just to kind of go through it, level 1 lets you see the worlds of the spirits. It's actually not that good, I feel. I mean...
You can look anywhere in the high or low worlds, upper or lower worlds.
I guess it's useful in the sense that it kind of combines adjusted perception with scrying, but you need a lot of successes to really get a clear picture. And then level 2 lets you summon an ancestral spirit. Level 3 lets you have a precognitive vision. Level 4 lets you placate the restless spirits of persons or animals. And level 5 lets you summon an army of the deceased. Level 5, pretty powerful. The others, I feel like the use cases are particular for the most part.
Well, if you're playing Nunnehi, presumably you're dealing a lot with the spirit world as it is. But yeah.
It does raise kind of this issue, which I think still exists in C20, where you can play a Nunnehi Chronicle with Nunnehi characters doing Nunnehi things, and it makes it very hard to integrate them into a mixed splat Chronicle.
Yeah, unless it's almost easier to mix them with werewolves.
Yeah.
Mages.
Which is probably why they first appeared in Rage Across Appalachia. And then we get some bunks, as well as some Nunnehi specific bunks. And that's it for chapter 5.
And then we have role-playing.
I quite like this chapter, short as it is.
It's a series of little essays or like writings about Changeling.
3 in total.
Yeah. The first one was kind of interesting. The Horror of Loss by Jennifer Hartshorn. She described Bedlam as my ADHD symptoms, and it was kind of odd. There was like one of them, like hyperfocus or various things like that. I'm like, But
it's framed as time and energy dedicated to an intense creative experience. So I think that's the particular sort of expression that she was going for.
Yeah.
But I think more importantly, it kind of addresses head on, again, that criticism of, oh, Changeling isn't dark enough, Changeling isn't hard, it's too bright, it's too happy. And says, well, no, here's some ways in which that's not true. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then we have the essay entitled, Oh Boy, a Cat's Eye Shooter, which kind of goes into just the joy of role-playing and the joy of nostalgia and being a kid and being excited about things, which is like, yeah, all right. I think this essay is like good reading for anybody who wants to play a Changeling who's not actually a minor.
Yep.
That's where I see it being the most useful.
And why we need changelings. I feel like this was very good, but I didn't understand it.
All right, here's my take on it, because it goes through some of the historical things surrounding Changeling lore and the real world expressions of that. You know, you have things like Bridget Cleary, who was burned and tortured by her husband and townsfolk because they thought she was a changeling, and this was like 1890. It wasn't the Middle Ages. So throughout history, you know, you have these cases where children didn't grow up the way their parents thought they should, or people suffered some kind of incident mentally or whatever and changed fundamentally. And so people said, oh, they must have been abducted by the fairies. And it's really sad when you look into the history of it to see all of these people misunderstood, being framed in this way that made them an other and made them, you know, made others perceive them as dangerous in some cases and respond accordingly. So I think it is important to kind of look at the social role people who don't fit in play. And that's what Changeling tries to approach in a certain sense. It kind of highlights, and I would say honors and respects, people who don't fit into the mold, people who are quirky and can't help it, people who are themselves, the hell what anybody else says, and how having those presences within a culture or a group of people reminds them of the dynamics of humanity, reminds them that all of this is to some extent constructed. All of this is stuff we're figuring out as a species, as a group. And that's beautiful, or it can be beautiful, and it should be beautiful. It's the exact kind of thing that technocracy is struggling to destroy. So, you know, but yeah, that all of that, I mean, it's like 3 pages of all of the kind of historical horrors and then 2 paragraphs at the end about why they're important. So the balance is a little strange.
Yeah.
But still, I wish, honestly, that the C20 Player's Guide had essays like this, because this used to be a hallmark of player's guides for each line. And I was sad that those were kind of missing. I mean, even the 1E core book had stuff like this. So, But yeah, a short chapter overall.
Then we're left with the appendix, the Autumn People errata.
Which is exactly how I love to end a Changeling book.
Yeah. Not a fan of this webcraft.
No. Because this is what directly ties Autumn People to the Weaver, as in the Werewolf Triad member.
Yeah. At level 5, you can summon a Paradox Spirit or a Nexus Crawler.
Great. I mean, useful for dealing with mages, but, you know.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, is, like, how often would Autumn People really or I shouldn't say Autumn People, I should say Dauntain. How often would Dauntain really encounter and know what they're dealing with in terms of werewolves and mages? I mean, they're attuned to changelings, so would they even recognize a mage when they came across one?
You might think the mage is a weird changeling.
Let alone know how to summon a Paradox Spirit to deal with them.
Well, I could see a lot of Dauntain thinking they're still dealing with changelings, but...
I suppose. I don't think they really had mechanics for sensing them, though, in that same way.
Yeah.
I'd have to look back at the Autumn People, and that's not something I've got the capacity for this week.
Well, kenning is this question of what it actually covers.
Yeah,
the
true.
additions too.
True.
But I don't know, somebody turns into a giant wolf thing or does weird magic, that kind of might suggest.
Right, but so if that happens and the Dauntain is not affected by delirium, I would assume they still wouldn't immediately think, I'm going to summon a Nexus Crawler. That'll deal with this.
Yep. Well, I don't think summoning Nexus Crawler is ever the answer to any question. But
right. It's just an odd... I mean, you go from level 3, put someone in a purgatory of boredom, to level 5, summon a Nexus Crawler.
And it talks about Weaver and the banality and stuff. I'm like, and then...
I did like... There are extended descriptions, which I think made their way into the 2nd edition core book, of what humans are like at each banality level from 5 to 10. And that is actually really useful.
This one's, I've noticed, is more extreme than in the C20 descriptions like this.
Yes.
Banality 5, you're like borderline insane. Okay, that's not...
But for human children, it's borderline maturity.
Yep.
It's a lot more centered on imagination and possibility, I think, which is an interesting thing.
Yeah. Well, there's banality changes throughout the editions, what it actually means.
Yeah.
Well, not even just throughout the editions, throughout the pages. Yeah.
And then we also have this power of berating oration, which is horrifyingly powerful. So
Yeah.
we had the sidebar in the Autumn People about, a librarian berating a childling could inflict 5 temporary banality at the drop of a hat, and here you could probably do 4 or 5 chimerical damage at the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, this is where the changelings turn to die from banality.
right.
It comes from this power specifically.
I'm okay with this having been left out of the Autumn People. I don't know that it needed to be in the player's guide.
Yep.
And then we get an ad for Mind's Eye Theater Vampire and an ad for Hunter the Reckoning, and that's the book.
This also shows that our printing is later. I have to assume that they weren't advertising Hunter the Reckoning in 1996.
Probably not. That would be some deep advance advertisement. I do like on the back cover, there's the Changeling Player's Guide includes expanded rules for casting cantrips without cards. How exciting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how would you sum up overall? I think it's definitely useful for the time it came out.
Yeah, not so much anymore.
Yeah, I like the legacies. That's about the big thing I like still. I like the essays and stuff, but you don't need to pull out your essays for in-game,
Yeah. I would say the legacies, the essays, the extended kith backgrounds if one doesn't have the kith books, and the Nunnehi background info if one is willing to take a heaping teaspoon of salt and do additional research on their own to actually flesh it out more.
I mean, at that point, would you need that over what's in C20? If you're going to do that research anyway?
Well, specifically talking about the geography and the different groups, the human groups, not the Nunnehi kiths themselves. So, because I don't think, we'll get to the C20 player's guide at some point eventually, but I do think that while I understand and appreciate the perspective they took where they kind of said, we are not experts, we're not from the cultures that we're talking about here, so we're just kind of not doing anything about the history of colonialism or, the different sort of cultural traditions or anything. And when you look at sort of the pages of geography, when they talk about Bella Tierra or the Fertile Crescent or, all of the sort of different places in the world, they're almost entirely these sort of mythologies around individual changeling figures in game. And you get very little, if anything, about the actual history of those places. Now, yeah, the internet is a wonderful resource that we have now and people can do their own research. But I would still like to see something solid in these books, because if nothing else, it tells you what the writers find important from those real world facts.
Yeah, there's a balance point.
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah. Anyway, really like those legacies, though. I'm sad they weren't in C20.
Yeah.
Though easy enough to bring in.
So there are bits that are useful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone has updated Spirit Link for C20, but it's in here if someone wants it.
So yeah, that brings us to the end of this episode on the Player's Guide. You can find Changeling the Podcast at changelingthepodcast.com. We're also Changeling the Podcast on Facebook. That's a page there. We're also on Twitter at ChangelingCast. And you can find our Discord. The easiest way to get there is to go to changelingthepodcast.com. Also, hopefully by the time this comes out, there'll be a link on our website to the Patreon. Yay. So yeah, until next time, don't let any Autumn people do any berating at you. Sounds unpleasant.
Or anyone, really. Help us keep the frenzied machine that is Changeling the Podcast going by signing up for our Patreon at www.patreon.com/changelingthepodcast. You'll get some sweet bennies, including a shout-out at the end of each episode. This episode goes out to Sanjigger, Seja, and Terry Robinson, stalwart warriors in the ongoing fight against banality. Cheers, and thanks for your support. Here come the outtakes. Well, I went through an 8-point program in order to learn how to play a puka, so that helped. It was a storyteller. One of the earliest games I played in, actually, because I wanted to play a puka, and I said basically that, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, and the storyteller said, here's an 8-point system for learning how to do it, practicing how to do it. And I wish I still had it, because it was really helpful. I'm trying to remember, I can't remember exactly what all the points were, but anyway, all of that is untrue. I just made that up on the spot. So, that's how to roll.